Let us pray together. God of grace, it is our delight and our devotion to give these gifts to you. All we are and all we have are yours alone. Accept this joyful offering as a token of our abiding love. Use it to bring peace, justice, and comfort to all the world. Amen.
When Naomi heard Moab that the Lord had come out to the aid of his people by providing for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in your home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you and turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me."
Don't you just love the smell of barley in the morning? I know I do. And if you've ever had your crops not produce, then you really, really love the smell. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Ruth. Now, I'm not the Ruth and Kevin Fielden Ruth that some of us know. That's a great love story, but that's not my story. I do have a pretty cool story, though, that I'd love to share with you this morning. See, it all started with my mother-in-law, Naomi. She's from a small town. You probably have never heard of it. And that's where well, maybe you have. Bethlehem? Oh, you have heard of Bethlehem. Maybe it's becoming more popular these days. But Naomi, my mother-in-law, started her family with Elimelech, my father-in-law. And they, in Bethlehem, started this family together. And it was during a time where there was no rain. And when there's no rain, there's no crops. And when there's no crops, there's no food. And when there's no food, there's no work. And when there's no work, there's no money. And when there's no money, there's no basic needs. And during this time, too, they had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And they knew they wanted to care for their sons, and so the only thing they could do was to move. And so they decided to head out on a journey away from Bethlehem. And they came to my homeland, Moab. It was so funny watching Mahlon and Chilion play in the streets. I mean, they truly were like goofballs growing up. But there was something special about them. They definitely showed an enormous amount of respect to their parents. They handled their friends with such gentleness and kindness. It was something that I really grew to admire. And as the years went on, one day, Mahlon's eyes caught mine, and I thought the rest would be history. I thought this would be my forever, my happily ever after. I loved being a part of Naomi and Elimelech's family. And soon, Chilion married Orpah, and the 6 of us worked together so well. We worked the fields together. We worshiped together. We prayed together. We were a great team. But if I'm being completely honest, the time that I spent with Naomi, my mother-in-law, were the times that I valued the most. those times were the most special. She had such a gentleness and kindness about her, a sense of peace, and there was joy that came out of her. It really made me comfortable with her to ask questions of my heart. In some of our times together, one thing that I learned about Naomi is she loved the meaning of names. She taught me that Bethlehem, for example, means house of bread, which I kind of had a hard time understanding since there was no bread at that time in Bethlehem. Remember the famine? And Elimelech, that means God is king. I often wondered which God. In my homeland, we worshiped many gods. So which God was king? What I learned from her is that there was one true God. There was one God that we learned and always worshiped and honored and put first. Milan means crowning joy, and for them, he was the crowning joy of their family. And Kilion means finish, and he was to complete their family. Now, I knew that there's also another meaning for Milan and for Kilion, and it's weak. But I never let on. I never told her that I knew that meaning. We continued to be so happy together. Things continued to go so well. Until one day we were out in the fields and word came that Kilion had taken ill. And before we knew it, he passed away. And there was my beautiful mother-in-law left as a widow. It was so hard for us to know what to do. It was so hard for us to rebuild our business and to get things going again. But we did it. The 5 of us, we did it. Until one day, Milan and Kilion both took ill. And it was so fast. It was like in a heartbeat. They too died. And so there we were left, the 3 of us, 3 widows. And what do we do? Luckily, word came from Bethlehem that God had blessed the land again, and that rain had come, and that crops were growing, and that land had been restored, and we should go back. Should go back to Bethlehem. Naomi sat us down and said that she was going back. We didn't really hear the word she was going back. We just assumed us, that we were going back. So we packed up the belongings that we had left, and we headed out. Not 2 minutes down the road, she stopped and she said, "You know, this is not right. I'm taking you away from your families. You need to go back, turn back, go back to your families and stay there and start your family there." We convinced her that no, our place was with her. So she allowed us to continue. But not another 2 minutes down the road, and she stopped us again. And for lack of a better word, gave us a biology lesson. She said, "I'm old, and I'm not going to be able to have any more children. And even if I am able to have more children, you'll be too old to have children with my miracle child. It's not right to go start your families. Go back home to your original people." My sister-in-law, Orpah, listened, and she did as our mother-in-law had asked. And while they said their goodbyes, I was left to imagine Naomi making this journey to Bethlehem by herself. And then once she gets to Bethlehem, she would be alone. I couldn't imagine this woman who had done so much for me. I couldn't imagine leaving her. But if I'm really honest with you, I couldn't imagine my life without her. I couldn't imagine not sitting at her feet and listening and hearing about God. And I turned to her and I said, no, don't make me leave you. I will not leave you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you are buried, I will be buried. And where you die, I will die. Don't make me leave you. She agreed. And I guess that was enough, because she knew that I was true to my meaning of my name, which means friend. And so we continued on into Bethlehem, and it was a long journey. And when we made it into the gates of Bethlehem, I could see the stairs, and I could hear the whispers. Her own family didn't even recognize her. And I remembered what Naomi's name means. It means lovely. You see, the years had taken a toll on Naomi, and she wasn't so lovely anymore. The time away from her family and friends, and the journey in and of itself, and the losing a husband and both of her sons, and grieving the time to know that she'll never again be able to push a restart button. She'll never be able to start a family again. But we settled in. I went to work. And my first day on the job, I met an awesome, wonderful man. He was quite the gentleman, and his name was Boaz. You know what? It turns out Boaz is in the same family as Elimelech. And so it didn't take much time at all when I was able to marry Boaz. The elders blessed us, blessed our union, and asked that we go and be fruitful and multiply. And that's what we did. And shortly after being married, we had a son, and his name is Obed, which means servant. And Obed had a son named Jesse. And Jesse had a son named David. And David was the greatest king of all of our people. And if you keep going down the line, do you know who came along later? Who? Jesus, who was the King of all kings. I can't imagine my life without Naomi in it. I can't imagine the love that I got from her taking the time to teach me about the one God. I can't imagine my life without the opportunity to get to know about the one God. And so grateful that she allowed herself to be used by God. For that, my life will be forever changed. I think yours could be too.
My name's Owen Henley, and let me just start by saying I got my wisdom teeth out 3 days ago, so it's going to be a little of a struggle. So At the beginning of the summer, our youth group went down to Charleston, South Carolina to do some work on 2 houses. Both of the homes were in impoverished areas. My group's family only needed their roof reshingled, while the other group, their house needed a little bit more work on it, and it was pretty bad. But so I'd never been on a mission trip with this youth group, and I soon come to realize it was the smallest group that had ever been on one, and I think that made an impression on me because I realized that all of us could have been off doing other things. We could have had jobs, could have been at Carowinds or with friends doing whatever we do with friends. Could have been doing nothing but playing video games and watching TV, but we decided not to. We could have just gone because our other friends didn't go, but instead we decided to sweat in 100+ degree weather in the high humidity of coastal South Carolina. We decided that was more fun and fulfilling than Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm sure all of you would agree with me that 100-degree weather is a lot more fun than staying in your house with air conditioning, but I mean, that was just our opinion. Small group environment did have its benefits. We could spend more time with each other, talk to everyone who went, and we all got to know each other pretty well. When we first got to the house, I thought we were just going to be reshingling the roof and then go help elsewhere if we had time. I was wrong. The first day we met the grandmother who lived at the house. Her name was Angela. Angela had lived in the house for 40+ years. She had raised her kids and her grandkids in that house. It was a part of her family. Even though Angela had a disability, she still managed to raise a family. It could not have been easy, but she was determined. This really stuck out to me because what she lacked in physical capability, she made up for in the strength of her love and faith. Angela's grandson, Elijah, lived there. Elijah was a 9-year-old boy who liked football, basketball, and WWE, just like me. Elijah wasn't just any normal 9-year-old, in my opinion. He was more articulate and had a better understanding of how the world worked than I ever could have when I was his age. We got to know each other a little better over the course of the week. We talked about sports. We talked a lot about wrestling, and I'm sure a lot of that world is pretty unknown to most of y'all, but the one thing I would say about wrestling is it somehow, even though it's fake, brings everyone together in a pretty cool way. I mean, we talked about it for at least an hour a day, and it was really fun. I've never talked to anyone like that about something that's fake, but oh well. Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. It is important to remember that neighbors are not just people who live next door to us. Neighbors are more than that. Neighbors are our youth and our youth leaders. Neighbors are people who live in Charlotte and in South Carolina. Neighbors are people who live in Brazil or Syria. Neighbors may be like or different from us. We may not speak the same language. We may not have the same education, but the one thing that brings us all together is that we are God's children. None of us are lesser in his eyes, and no social class or location can take that away. God really doesn't put any limit on who our neighbors are, so neither should we. On behalf of the youth group, I'd like to thank Teresa and all the adult volunteers for giving up all that time to make all this work. They showed us what it means to care for each other. They taught us how to get up early, work hard, throw each other around in the ocean, simply be close with God. The one thing that stuck out to me the most was a conversation I overheard in Angela's house. Her sister was on the phone with one of her friends and said something along the lines of, her faith needs to be stronger. I'm over here just out of surgery, and I'm right back in the church. My faith is what her faith needs to be. She needs her faith to be as strong as mine. She needs Jesus. I'm not sure what the situation was, but all I know is it takes someone with a very strong faith to call out someone like that in hopes that they do find Jesus. I'm grateful for the neighbors in this youth group and in this church. I am grateful for the people God calls us to serve because we share our lives with them. We become more like Jesus Christ every day when we do help other people.
Hi, I'm Maddie Hooper, and I also participated in the high school mission trip to Charleston, South Carolina to help out with flood relief that happened there. The story of Ruth that Teresa just shared about is about friendship, kindness, compassion, and faithfulness. I'm here to share a story with similar characteristics. It turns out when utilizing these characteristics, we can grow closer together and closer to God. Our stories and memories from the mission trip provide us with a great illustration. It was the first day of the mission trip, and we found out that our high school group was getting split up into 4 small groups, and then those 4 small groups were getting paired together to work at 2 different sites. 2 small groups at one location and 2 at the other. Brian Mateer and Ellery Brannon were my small group leaders, and our small group got paired up with Karen Perry's. When we all arrived to the site on the first day, I could tell the house we were working on definitely needed a little work, but my eyes were still deceived. It actually needed a lot more work than we could imagine. From looking at the house on the outside, you could see one unfinished roof, lots of trash, and some peeling paint on the side. But inside lurked black mold, and we soon found out we could no longer work on the inside of the house due to the safety precautions that black mold can bring to one person. John, our mission director in Charleston, was waiting for us outside the house. He explained to us how the roofers who were fixing Miss Wright's house after the flood suddenly quit when they found out she didn't have enough money to pay for it. They left a noticeable mess just about everywhere around the house and didn't bother to clean up or fix some of the more hazardous parts on the roof. They just left. John gave us our materials, and we started to work quickly. As our roof work began, we first had to rip out the rotten wooden planks and replace them with the new ones. There was one plank in particular that I could remember all of us removing. It was probably one of the more unstable ones, and it was a little dangerous for us to be near it or work on it since it was on the side of the house. We carefully removed the rusty nails and peeled back the plank of wood, and before we knew it, we were looking straight into Miss Wright's bathroom. On one of the walls of the shower, mold was tearing and making a grand appearance. The bath was filled with black, murky water, and there were pieces of wood that had fallen in there from the other roof workers that didn't finish their job. Many questions and emotion filled my head. Why was this one plank of wood the only thing protecting her bathroom from the outside world? And why had Miss Wright taken so long for her to help her find help? I felt guilty and sorry that Miss Wright couldn't even use her own bathroom in her house. Looking up at my peers, I could tell they were thinking the same thing. We knew we had to put a supportive roof over her head to make sure Miss Wright didn't have to worry about any other weather complications. We all started to work in a pattern. Tar paper, button nail it down, repeat. Lay down a shingle, nail gun it down, repeat. No one was lazy about finishing. No one complained about the labor or the heat. We just worked. Looking back at it, it actually amazes me. A group of 9 teenagers in the blazing heat, never complaining, just getting work done, and surprisingly having fun. That is something you don't see often. And I think that is where God was with us. We knew Miss Wright's situation, we saw the hardships she was facing within her house, and out of the compassion and faith, my friends and I finished the roof in 2 days. Miss Wright had a lot of trust. Miss Wright had to put a lot of trust with us to get her house and have teenagers do manual labor. In a way, Miss Wright was sort of like Ruth. She trusted us to do work on her house and had faith that we could help her. And in a way, we were like Ruth too. We stepped out of our comfort zone to help someone who we didn't know and have faith in God that no one would get hurt and that we could finish the roof right on time. When we were leaving the house on the last day, I noticed something while I was putting the last piece of equipment inside our house. I saw a choir robe laying on her couch, untouched from the dirt and mess that it was surrounded by. Her dedication to God and worship showed me how important it is to keep the important things important. So my challenge for you today is to be more like Ruth, to live out a true trust in God's provision and to work through the ordinary means. So be ready. Look for the blessings that will come when God is your first and most important priority.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Nicholas Thompson. I'm a recent UNC college graduate, and I went on the Mid-High mission trip as a leader, once again returning. So when Teresa asked me if I could speak this morning, I thought, yeah, sure, public speaking experience, always a good thing to have, especially if you are fresh out of college and don't have a job. So if you are hiring, please let me know. Now, like I said, I just got out of college, so this ended up being written a little bit like a college paper, as in 2 things. First, I tried my hardest to make a sort of airtight argument that can't really be rebutted, and secondly, I wrote it all at the last second. So, talking about the story of Ruth, that we are on the surface, you've got a story of friendship, faithfulness, kindness, and compassion, living out a true trust in God's provision, all that good stuff. But when you get into the details, you can find a little bit more to it than that. So, for example, part of the story is how Ruth and her sister-in-law Orpah were Moabites, and that is who married Naomi's sons, who were from the tribe of Judah, and this was happening in a time when intertribal marriage was a little bit frowned upon. So maybe it was just setting up the story, but also it could have been a lesson in there about there's not anything wrong with marrying someone outside of your culture. Another example is how you see the struggles of Naomi and Ruth in being single women, having to try and get by in such a patriarchal society where they, of course, ended up having to rely on a man to get them through. But what I want to focus on is Ruth's decision to make that journey with Naomi back out of Moab and back to Judea, where Naomi was from. So imagine, if you can, your spouse has just died, you have no children, you live with your mother-in-law and your sister-in-law, and they're both also widows. And now, I think a lot of people might be scared to be alone in the room with their mother-in-law and sister-in-law, especially if the sister-in-law leaves. But then think about going on a journey with your mother-in-law back to her homeland, a place where you've never been to, you've only heard about it, and everyone there is of a religion that you've only converted to, while pretty much all of them were born into it. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's a pretty uncomfortable situation, and I know I'd have a bit of a struggle making that decision. But that right there is the main reason why I think Ruth is so awesome. She did not choose to turn back and go back to Moab. She went on with Naomi to an unknown land where she was not completely sure of the culture, and it was going to be a struggle for her because, like I said, there are two widowed women. But when Naomi claimed that she was being scorned by the Lord and that Ruth should save herself from the misery that the Lord was putting her through and to go back to her gods and to her people, Ruth replied, "Do not urge me to leave you or to turn my back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me." So, despite everything that Naomi is telling her, Ruth goes on this journey, which is likely to be to her own detriment because she loved Naomi so much and her new founded religion so much that she just was willing to get outside of her comfort zone to go back with Naomi. And so I think this part of the story really showed me how just being fearless and being consistent in difficult situations can produce you some good results. Ruth showed the love of God, and the love of God ended up being shown back to her. And so on the mid-high trip, for me, that was most apparent when, through some miscommunication, we thought we were going to be playing with some kids at a complex where they were given housing when they were previously homeless, and instead it was going to be adults that we were hanging out with. And so it was up to us to go and knock on the doors to invite them to come down and interact with us. So a little backstory, when I was back in middle school years ago, we went down and did VBS in Atlanta. And during that week, over 3 years, every day we would have to go out and knock on doors to bring kids to play. Well, over those 3 years, I managed to somehow get out of this duty, all except for one time, because knocking on strangers' doors is just not my thing. But when we were on this trip here and we had to go up and knock on the doors to get the adults to come down and interact with us, these middle schoolers, they were a little uncomfortable. I still felt slightly uncomfortable, but in the end, they had no problem going up and doing it. And they're kidding around trying to knock on the door, hide behind each other, and make them talk. But at the end of the day, they got through it just fine and didn't really have too much of a problem getting outside of their comfort zone to go reach out to interact with the community. And so for me, I think that's really one important lesson that maybe is not so apparent here in Ruth that you can take, is that if you get outside your comfort zone, maybe you have a coworker or a friend who's going through a hard time and you need to talk with them about Christ maybe, or there's a situation where you need to talk to an authority figure who might intimidate you a little bit, but they're doing something that you see a problem with or you need to see fixed. Even if you're worried about what might be consequences of that, if you see something that you need to affect change, that you should have no problem getting outside of your comfort zone and working on fixing that. So sitting on the couch and not really doing anything about the status quo, even if you don't really like it, is pretty much the same thing as accepting it. So, I mean, like I said, this is the main thing that I got out of these kids on this mission trip. They're trusting and they were ready to roll with anything. Every day, they didn't know where exactly we were going to be going, but they knew that uncomfortable or comfortable, they would have no problem getting out there and doing it with each other. Even with the fact that our destination unknown, we usually go down to South Carolina. This year we stayed right here in Charlotte. They were still cool and they just took it all in stride. So God works in all these sorts of different ways to teach people lessons and to show all sorts of things, and I definitely think the kids in this youth group is certainly one of them.
I'm going to ask that for our benediction, we're going to do our United Methodist Youth Fellowship benediction. I'm going to ask you to grab the hand of somebody beside you. Don't leave anybody unconnected. Casey loves this part because he's not germophobic at all. Join with me. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Oh.